At the University of Illinois' Genealogical Research Center, Dr. Jennifer Walsh was leading a comprehensive project to digitize and document family photographs from the Prohibition era as part of a broader study on American social history during the 1920s. Among the thousands of family portraits submitted by descendants across the Midwest was one image that would soon challenge everything historians thought they knew about a notorious Chicago crime family. The photograph, dated Christmas 1922 in careful script, showed what appeared to be a joyful family gathering in an elegantly appointed living room. 8 family members were arranged in the traditional poses of holiday photography: parents, grandparents, and children of various ages, all dressed in their finest clothes and displaying the confident smiles typical of prosperous families during the early 1920s. According to the accompanying family documentation, the subjects were identified as the Torino family of Chicago's Little Italy neighborhood. The family patriarch, Salvatore Torino, was listed as a successful restaurant owner, while his wife Rosa managed their household and helped oversee their 3 children. 2 elderly relatives completed the family group in what appeared to be a perfectly conventional Christmas portrait. The technical quality of the photograph was excellent, showing the sharp detail and professional composition typical of studio work from Chicago's established Italian-American photographers. Everything about the image suggested domestic happiness and economic prosperity during one of America's most dynamic decades. However, as Dr. Walsh began cross-referencing the family members' identities with historical records as part of her research methodology, something troubling emerged. One of the individuals in the photograph, a well-dressed man positioned prominently in the family group, appeared to be someone who, according to official records, should not have been alive in December 1922. The man in question bore a striking resemblance to Antonio "Tony" Marcelli, a notorious Chicago bootlegger who had been reported killed in a gang shooting 6 months earlier. Newspaper accounts from June 1922 had documented Marcelli's death in considerable detail, including witness testimonies, police reports, and a funeral attended by hundreds of mourners. Yet here he appeared to be, very much alive and posing happily, with the Torino family for their Christmas portrait. Dr. Walsh's discovery prompted an immediate investigation into Antonio Marcelli's supposed death and its documentation in Chicago police and newspaper records. What she found revealed a carefully orchestrated deception that had allowed one of Chicago's most wanted criminals to escape justice by faking his own death. Chicago Police Department records from June 15, 1922, contained detailed reports of a shooting outside the Bella Vista restaurant on Taylor Street that had allegedly killed Marcelli during a confrontation with rival bootleggers. Detective Lieutenant Frank Romano's incident report described finding Marcelli's body with multiple gunshot wounds and confirmed identification through fingerprints and witness statements. However, closer examination of the police files revealed inconsistencies that suggested the investigation had been compromised. The fingerprint analysis that had supposedly confirmed Marcelli's identity was missing from the official file, and several key witnesses had provided statements that contradicted each other on basic details of the shooting. Most significantly, the coroner's report filed by Dr. Michael Benedetto contained unusual language and omissions that were inconsistent with standard death investigations. Dr. Benedetto had noted that the body showed injuries consistent with gunshot trauma, but had not provided the detailed wound analysis typically required for homicide victims. Contemporary newspaper coverage of Marcelli's death also showed unusual patterns. While the Chicago Tribune and Chicago Herald had reported the shooting prominently, their articles relied entirely on police statements rather than independent investigation. No journalist had apparently attempted to interview family members or examine the crime scene independently. The funeral arrangements for Marcelli had been handled by Torino Family Funeral Services, a business owned by Salvatore Torino, the same man who appeared as the family patriarch in the Christmas photograph. This connection suggested that the Torino family had been directly involved in staging Marcelli's false death. Contemporary FBI surveillance reports, declassified decades later, revealed that federal agents had suspected Marcelli's death was fraudulent but had been unable to gather sufficient evidence to prove their suspicions. Agent William Murphy's confidential memo from July 1922 stated, strong indications that Marcelli's shooting was staged to allow subject to escape federal investigation into bootlegging operations. Investigation into the Torino family's background revealed that their restaurant business was actually a front for one of Chicago's most sophisticated bootlegging operations during Prohibition. The family had been under federal investigation for months before Marcelli's supposed death, and their Christmas photograph had inadvertently documented the presence of a federal fugitive who was supposed to be dead. Federal Bureau of Investigation files, obtained through Freedom of Information Act requests, showed that the Torino family had been identified as major suppliers of illegal alcohol to speakeasies throughout Chicago's Italian-American neighborhoods. Their restaurant served as a distribution center for imported liquor and locally produced spirits. Salvatore Torino had immigrated to Chicago in 1905 and had built his illegal enterprise through family connections to Sicilian organized crime networks. By 1922, federal agents estimated that the Torino operation was generating hundreds of thousands of dollars annually through bootlegging activities. Antonio Marcelli had been a key partner in the Torino bootlegging network, using his connections to corrupt police officials and political figures to protect their operations from law enforcement interference. Federal investigators had been building a case against both men when Marcelli's apparent death had eliminated their primary target. The FBI surveillance files contained detailed observations of the Torino family's activities during late 1922, including notes about unusual security measures and the presence of individuals who matched descriptions of supposedly deceased criminals. Agent Murphy's December 1922 report noted, "Torino residence shows evidence of housing additional occupants beyond documented family members." Financial records seized during later federal raids revealed that the Torino family had made substantial payments to corrupt officials throughout 1922, including Chicago police officers, Cook County coroner staff, and municipal clerks who processed death certificates. These payments had apparently purchased the cooperation necessary to stage Marcelli's false death. The Christmas photograph represented a crucial piece of evidence that federal investigators had been seeking, proof that Marcelli was alive and continuing to operate within the Chicago bootlegging network despite his official death. The family's decision to include him in their holiday portrait had inadvertently created evidence that could expose their entire criminal enterprise. Detailed examination of the supposed crime scene and evidence from Antonio Marcelli's alleged murder revealed an elaborate deception involving corrupt police officials, medical personnel, and organized crime figures working together to create convincing documentation of a death that had never occurred. Chicago Police Department internal affairs files, discovered during a 1970s corruption investigation, contained evidence that Detective Lieutenant Frank Romano had received substantial payments from the Torino organization to falsify reports about Marcelli's death. Romano's personal financial record showed unexplained deposits totaling $5,000 during June 1922, equivalent to nearly 2 years of his police salary. The staged shooting had apparently used an unidentified vagrant whose body was discovered in Lake Michigan several days before Marcelli's supposed death. Coroner Dr. Michael Benedetto had processed the vagrant's corpse as Marcelli's remains, creating false documentation to support the deception. FBI forensic analysis conducted years later revealed that the fingerprints supposedly used to identify Marcelli's body had been taken from drinking glasses at Torino's restaurant rather than from an actual corpse. The fingerprint cards filed with the coroner's office showed evidence of tampering and artificial transfer of prints. Witness statements from the supposed shooting had been provided by individuals who were later identified as employees of the Torino bootlegging operation. These witnesses had given carefully rehearsed accounts of a gang shooting that had never occurred, creating false testimony to support the fraudulent death investigation. The funeral arrangements had been designed to prevent close examination of the supposed victim. The casket had remained closed throughout the funeral service, with family members claiming that Marcelli's injuries were too severe for viewing. The burial had been conducted immediately after the service, preventing any opportunity for additional examination. Most significantly, the cemetery records showed that the grave supposedly containing Marcelli's remains was actually empty. Excavation conducted during a 1950s federal investigation revealed that no human remains had ever been buried at the site, confirming that the entire death had been fabricated. The Christmas photograph provided the first concrete evidence that Marcelli had survived his supposed murder and continued operating within Chicago's organized crime networks. Declassified FBI surveillance files revealed that federal agents had maintained intermittent observation of the Torino family residence during late 1922 and had documented evidence supporting the presence of individuals who matched descriptions of supposedly deceased criminals. Though they had been unable to obtain clear photographic evidence until Dr. Walsh's discovery, Agent William Murphy's surveillance reports from November and December 1922 contained detailed observations of activities at the Torino family home that suggested the presence of additional occupants beyond the documented family members. Murphy had noted unusual patterns of food delivery, multiple bedroom lights during evening hours, and observation of male figures whose physical characteristics matched descriptions of individuals supposedly deceased. The FBI had attempted to photograph activities at the Torino residence using long-range surveillance equipment, but their images had been insufficient to provide definitive identification of specific individuals. Agent Murphy's December 20, 1922 report stated, "Observed family gathering with apparent additional guests, but lighting conditions and distance prevented clear identification of subjects." Federal surveillance had also documented the Torino family's extensive security measures, including the presence of armed guards and the use of code words for visitors. These precautions had made it nearly impossible for agents to confirm their suspicions about Marcelli's survival through direct observation. The FBI files contained transcripts of intercepted telephone conversations between Torino family members and unknown associates, including references to Tony's Christmas present and discussions about keeping the family together for the holidays. These conversations had suggested the presence of an important guest during the holiday period. Most significantly, the surveillance reports documented unusual financial activity during late 1922, including large cash transactions and the purchase of additional furniture and household supplies that suggested the residence was accommodating more people than the official family membership. Agent Murphy's final surveillance report from December 1922 concluded, "Strong evidence suggests Torino family is harboring individuals who are supposedly deceased, but definitive proof remains elusive. Recommend continued observation and investigation of family activities." The Christmas photograph that Dr. Walsh discovered represented the definitive proof that federal investigators had been seeking. Clear visual evidence that Antonio Marcelli was alive and continuing to operate within the Chicago organized crime network. Investigation into the broader bootlegging network that had protected Antonio Marcelli revealed a sophisticated criminal enterprise involving dozens of families throughout Chicago's Italian-American communities, all working together to evade federal prohibition enforcement through elaborate deception and corruption. Federal investigation files documented that the Torino Marcelli organization had been part of a larger network of bootlegging families who shared resources, information, and protection strategies throughout the early 1920s. This network had developed sophisticated methods for avoiding federal prosecution, including the use of false identities and staged deaths. The Christmas photograph represented more than just evidence of Marcelli's survival. It documented a family gathering that included several other individuals who were supposed to be dead, imprisoned, or fugitive from federal justice. Further analysis of the photograph revealed at least 2 other men who matched descriptions of wanted criminals who had supposedly died or disappeared during 1922. Financial records seized during subsequent federal raids showed that the bootlegging network had generated enormous profits during 1922, with individual families earning hundreds of thousands of dollars through illegal alcohol sales. These profits had funded the elaborate deceptions necessary to protect key criminals from federal prosecution. The network's success had been built on systematic corruption of law enforcement and municipal officials throughout Chicago. Federal investigators estimated that the bootlegging families had spent over $100,000 annually on bribes and protection payments to corrupt officials during the early 1920s. Contemporary FBI analysis revealed that the Torino family had served as a central coordination point for the broader criminal network, using their restaurant business to facilitate meetings between bootlegging families and to distribute resources necessary for evading federal investigation. The staged death strategy had apparently been used multiple times by the network to protect valuable criminals from federal prosecution. FBI files contained evidence of at least 6 other supposedly deceased bootleggers who had been observed alive and operating within Chicago, organized crime during 1922 and 1923. The Christmas photograph had inadvertently documented what federal investigators described as a reunion of supposedly dead criminals, providing evidence of the most sophisticated criminal deception operation of the Prohibition era. Analysis of the Christmas photograph using modern forensic techniques revealed additional details that confirmed not only Antonio Marcelli's presence, but also provided evidence of the elaborate measures taken by the Torino family to conceal the identities of their criminal guests during the holiday gathering. Digital enhancement of the photograph revealed that several of the individuals had made subtle attempts to alter their appearance for the family portrait. Marcelli appeared to have dyed his hair and grown a mustache to change his appearance from the police photographs taken before his supposed death. Forensic analysis also revealed evidence of careful positioning designed to minimize the visibility of distinguishing features that might allow identification of wanted criminals. The photographer had apparently been instructed to position subjects in ways that obscured facial characteristics while maintaining the appearance of a normal family gathering. The photograph's background revealed additional evidence of the family's criminal activities. Digital enhancement showed the edges of what appeared to be cases of illegal alcohol stored in the room where the photograph was taken, suggesting that the family's bootlegging operations continued even during holiday celebrations. Most significantly, forensic examination revealed that the photograph had been taken using professional equipment and techniques that exceeded what would normally be available for family portraits. The lighting, composition, and technical quality suggested that the photographer had been specifically chosen for his ability to create images that would appear innocent while concealing incriminating details. Comparison with other family photographs from the same period showed that the Christmas 1922 image was unique in its careful composition and professional quality, suggesting that special preparations had been made for this particular documentation. The photographer's identity was eventually traced through technical analysis of the image's characteristics. Records showed that the portrait had been taken by Marco Benedetti, a professional photographer who had been identified by federal investigators as an associate of Chicago organized crime families. Benedetti's business records, subpoenaed during later federal investigations, revealed that he had been paid substantially more than his normal rates for the Torino family portrait and had signed confidentiality agreements regarding the session. Dr. Walsh's discovery of the Christmas photograph prompted the FBI to reopen its investigation into the Torino bootlegging network and the systematic use of staged deaths to protect wanted criminals. The photograph provided the definitive evidence that federal investigators had been seeking for decades. The FBI immediately launched a comprehensive review of all supposedly closed cases involving deceased bootleggers from the early 1920s, using the Torino photograph as a model for identifying other potential fraud cases. Digital analysis of archived photographs and surveillance images revealed evidence of several other supposedly dead criminals who had continued operating within organized crime networks. Federal prosecutors used the photograph as evidence to pursue charges against surviving members of the corruption network that had facilitated Marcelli's false death. Several retired police officials and municipal employees were indicted for their roles in the elaborate deception, though most were too elderly to face meaningful prosecution. The investigation revealed that the Torino family's success in concealing wanted criminals had made them valuable allies for organized crime families throughout the Midwest. Their Christmas photograph had documented what federal investigators described as a criminal convention, featuring wanted fugitives from multiple federal investigations. Modern financial analysis of the bootlegging network's operations revealed that the Torino organization had generated profits equivalent to millions of current dollars during the early 1920s. These enormous profits had funded the sophisticated deception operations that had allowed key criminals to escape federal prosecution. The FBI's renewed investigation also revealed that several families throughout Chicago's Italian-American communities had used similar deception strategies during Prohibition, suggesting that staged deaths and false identities had been common criminal tactics rather than isolated incidents. Federal authorities used the evidence from the Christmas photograph to support broader investigations into organized crime families that had descended from the Prohibition-era bootlegging networks. DNA analysis and genealogical research revealed connections between the Torino network and criminal organizations that continued operating into the late 20th century. The photograph that was meant to preserve a joyful family Christmas had instead preserved evidence of one of the most sophisticated criminal deception operations in American history. The discovery of Antonio Marcelli's survival and the exposure of the elaborate criminal network that had protected him fundamentally changed historians' understanding of organized crime's sophistication during the Prohibition era. Dr. Walsh's research demonstrated that criminal organizations had been far more advanced in their deception capabilities than previously documented. The University of Illinois published Dr. Walsh's findings in a comprehensive research paper that became required reading for law enforcement academies and organized crime researchers. The paper, titled "Staged Deaths and Criminal Identity Deception During Prohibition," documented the systematic use of false deaths as criminal protection strategies. The National Archives reclassified dozens of Prohibition-era criminal cases based on evidence revealed through analysis of the Torino photograph and similar family images. Federal authorities acknowledged that many supposedly solved cases from the 1920s had actually involved successful criminal deceptions. Modern law enforcement agencies adopted new protocols for investigating suspicious deaths based on lessons learned from the Marcelli case. The FBI developed enhanced verification procedures for confirming deaths of wanted criminals, including mandatory DNA analysis and independent forensic examination. The Torino family descendants, who had donated the photograph collection without knowledge of its criminal significance, cooperated fully with federal investigations and expressed shock at learning about their ancestors' activities. Several family members became advocates for historical crime research and victim rights organizations. Chicago's Italian-American Historical Society established a research program dedicated to documenting the experiences of immigrant families during Prohibition, including both victims and participants in organized crime activities. The program emphasizes the complex social pressures that led many immigrant families to involvement in illegal activities. The Christmas photograph was placed on permanent display at the FBI's Chicago field office as an example of how criminal evidence can be preserved in unexpected places and how modern technology can reveal historical deceptions that seemed perfect at the time. Antonio Marcelli's story became a cautionary tale about the long reach of justice and the impossibility of completely concealing criminal activity, even through elaborate deceptions that fool investigators for decades. 40 years after Dr. Walsh first identified Antonio Marcelli in the Torino family Christmas photograph, the image has become one of the most significant pieces of evidence documenting the sophistication of organized crime during America's Prohibition era. The photograph serves as proof that criminal organizations were far more advanced in their deception capabilities than law enforcement had realized. The FBI has established the Walsh Photographic Evidence Research Program, using advanced digital analysis to examine thousands of historical photographs for evidence of concealed criminal activity. The program has identified dozens of additional cases where supposedly deceased criminals continued operating within organized crime networks. Law enforcement agencies worldwide now use the Marcelli case as a training example for investigating suspicious deaths and identity fraud. The elaborate deception techniques documented in the Torino network have been identified in criminal organizations throughout Europe and South America. Modern genealogical research companies have adopted protocols based on Dr. Walsh's methodology, using family photographs to verify historical records and identify potential fraud in ancestry documentation. This research has revealed that identity deception was far more common during the early 20th century than previously recognized. The University of Illinois' Organized Crime Research Center, established using federal grants prompted by the Marcelli discovery, continues investigating the intersection of family history and criminal activity. Students use advanced technology to analyze family photographs and documents for evidence of concealed criminal connections. For contemporary audiences, the Torino Christmas photograph serves as a powerful reminder that criminal activity often operated within seemingly normal family structures and that evidence of historical crimes may be preserved in unexpected places. Dr. Walsh, now Professor Emeritus at the University of Illinois, continues researching family photography as historical evidence. Her work has revolutionized the field of historical crime investigation and has provided closure for dozens of families seeking answers about mysterious deaths and disappearances from the Prohibition era. The photograph that was meant to preserve a joyful family Christmas celebration has instead preserved evidence of one of the most sophisticated criminal deception operations in American history. Antonio Marcelli's presence in the family portrait, captured forever in a moment of apparent domestic happiness, ensured that the truth about his survival and the systematic corruption that protected him would eventually be revealed. The image serves as testament to the impossibility of completely concealing criminal activity and the power of modern technology to reveal truths that seemed safely buried by time and careful deception. The Torino family's Christmas gathering, documented for posterity in 1922, has provided justice for victims of organized crime and valuable insights into the sophisticated criminal networks that shaped American urban development during the Prohibition era.